The narrative opens, introducing John, a young man whose dwelling is nestled deep within the forest. The world has been ravaged by climate change, leaving humanity decimated. The few survivors are scattered across various isolated locations. Due to rampant starvation and the complete collapse of law and order, some of these survivors have tragically descended into becoming vicious, cannibalistic brutes. To protect his family, John had painstakingly crafted a secret hideout in the woods, where they lived in constant fear. One day, as John was quietly observing the woods, he was startled by a sudden noise. Turning around, he was horrified to see a group of the dreaded enemies approaching. He immediately bolted toward his home. Meanwhile, John's father, who had been asleep inside, was also awakened by the distant sounds of the approaching attackers. He peered out to assess the situation and was struck with terror upon seeing the hostiles nearing their refuge. John reached home just in time. The father and son, wasting no precious moments, quickly gathered their essential belongings and made their escape through the back door. John's wife was with them, but a debilitating illness had severely injured her, making it impossible for her to run fast. Recognizing their peril, John's father made a swift, desperate decision. He hid John and his wife inside a makeshift, filthy pit box. The old man then armed himself with a staff and bravely walked out to face the aggressors alone. Though he managed to strike down 3 or 4 of the enemy, he was no match for their overwhelming numbers and ferocity. They mercilessly attacked and brutally murdered him. John and his wife, hidden in the pit, witnessed the entire gruesome scene, their sorrow and helplessness expressed only through tears. The enemies proceeded to loot their house. In their haste, they also inadvertently took a crucial bag the family had left behind. This bag held John's wife's vital medication, without which her infection would worsen. As if their despair wasn't deep enough, they watched in agony as the attackers bound the father's corpse to wooden logs, carrying him away like a hunted animal. After some time, John returned to the house with his wife and was devastated by the sight of their ruined home. His anxiety amplified upon seeing his wife's worsening wound. The infection had flared up, and she was burning with a high fever, lapsing into unconsciousness. In that moment of absolute hopelessness, John found a surge of courage. He reinforced the house with gathered logs to ensure his wife's protection. After leaving her a supply of water, he set out to track the enemies and retrieve the crucial bag of medicine. It was the chilling winter season, and the enemies had stripped them of all their warm clothing. John was dressed only in a t-shirt and trousers. Shivering from the cold, he slowly pressed on. Exhausted by hunger and the freezing temperatures, he grew weak and collapsed to the ground. Just as he was about to surrender to defeat, he spotted a small child. The sight of the child reignited a spark of hope. Gathering his strength, he struggled back to his feet and began to follow the boy. The child, frightened by John, took off running, and John swiftly pursued him. The child's home was nearby. He rushed inside and slammed the door shut. John exerted all his might, breaking down the door to enter. Inside, he found the boy huddled with a shivering old man, terrified of him. John's only objective was to procure warm clothing. He quickly grabbed what he needed and left. Following the trail left by the enemies, he eventually reached a new location. The sight that greeted him caused John to lose all composure. He found only the bones of his father. The attackers had cooked and consumed his flesh. This realization shattered John. Controlling his anguish, he buried his father's remains right there. Driven mad by rage, John vowed to take revenge on the enemy. He soon came across a tent. Instead of entering directly, he tossed a stone to check for occupants. Certain the tent was empty, he went inside. He discovered a box containing a matchbox, a knife, and a whistle. Believing these items would be useful, he secured them. Continuing his journey, he realized he was lost, constantly circling back to the same spot. To gain perspective, he climbed a tall tree to scout the enemy's location. The idea proved fruitful, as he spotted smoke rising in the distance. However, a moment of distraction caused him to slip, and he fell from the great height. The impact of the fall attracted a pack of wild dogs. John heard their ominous barking. He tried to run for his life but collapsed, having sustained a deep leg wound from the fall. He began to crawl forward. As night fell, his fear of the wild dogs intensified. John acted with cunning. He gathered firewood and started a fire. He then used a burning log like a torch to confront the animals. The dogs, terrified of the fire, dared not approach and eventually ran off. John had a narrow escape and slept there for the night. Waking up the next morning, the dogs were gone. John resumed his journey. This time, he noticed blood flowing in a river. He backtracked a little to find the source. He saw a woman washing blood-stained knives in the river. John employed his wits, avoiding a direct confrontation, and stayed hidden, observing her. Once she left, John picked up a stone and followed her. This woman was one of the enemies. By trailing her, John was able to locate the enemy camp. However, only she was there. Seizing the opportunity, as he made his way inside, he noticed bells strung on wires along the ground. He proceeded cautiously and finally saw his bag. But upon checking it, he discovered all the medicines were missing. John quickly entered the house to search for the medicine. Unbeknownst to him, the woman had seen him, and she was silently approaching. She attacked John from behind. John fought back, and a fierce hand-to-hand combat ensued. Despite his hunger and exhaustion, John was strong. He overpowered the woman, grabbed a nearby stone, struck her head, and killed her. After killing her, he searched the cabinets for the medicines. He then noticed the enemies were returning. He hastily wiped away the blood and erased all evidence of the struggle to make it seem as if nothing had happened. To hide the body, John dragged it outside. In his haste, his axe fell to the ground. With the enemies close, he concealed the body behind a tree and hid there himself to observe. John watched as the enemies returned, this time bringing the small child they had captured. He was filled with sorrow, knowing he could do nothing. The enemies prepared to cook their meal. Just then, one of the enemies spotted John's lost axe. Sensing danger, he alerted his comrades. They began a thorough search of the area. John quickly covered the woman's body with leaves and lay down to hide. After a while, the enemies gave up the search and returned. John crawled to the house and attempted to go inside. He saw a wounded enemy standing guard. John waited until the guard left. As soon as the guard went inside, John moved to rescue the bound child. Seeing John, the boy screamed in terror, believing John had come to hurt him, just like before. John quickly calmed the child and began to untie him. The child's persistent crying drew the enemy guard out. John had just enough time to free the boy and help him escape. After the boy was gone, John slipped past the guard and entered the house. He spotted a locked wooden box. He was certain the medicines were inside. He tried to smash the lock but, despite his best efforts, could not break it open. Just then, John saw the leader of the enemies returning. He quickly slipped out and hid underneath the house, waiting for him to leave. When the leader entered, he noticed the dirt on the box's lock. He instantly realized someone had infiltrated their camp. He informed his comrades, and they all began a frantic search. John realized they must have discovered him, especially after finding the body of their female accomplice. John remained in his hiding spot from day until night. In the dark, he witnessed the enemies cremating the body of their fallen companion. Meanwhile, back at home, John's wife regained consciousness. Finding John missing, she tried to leave, but the door was locked. She struggled to break it open, but her injury prevented her. Her condition worsened, and she collapsed to the floor. John waited all night. In the morning, while the enemies were sleeping, he crept into the camp. He cautiously approached the leader and stole the key from his neck. He then unlocked the box. His hunch was correct, the medicines were inside. He quickly grabbed the medicine, locked the box, and made his escape. In his rush, he failed to notice the bell wire. He knocked into it, the bell rang, and the leader and the other enemies woke up and began to pursue him. John tried to escape, but exhaustion prevented him from running far, and he was captured. They stripped him of his clothes, tied him to the ground, and started a fire. It appeared they were preparing to cook him. At that moment, John spotted the whistle nearby. He grabbed it and blew it loudly, the sound attracting the attention of the wild dogs. Hearing the barking, the leader and his companions fled. Seizing the opportunity, John used his knife to cut the ropes and hid behind a nearby tree. The dogs missed John, and he narrowly escaped death. He quickly put his clothes back on and ran away from the camp. However, the leader was cunning. To evade the dogs, he deliberately injured one of his own men, leaving him to be caught by the animals, and then continued his pursuit alone. John was unaware the leader was following him. Exhausted, he leaned against a tree when an enemy attacked him from behind, kicking him to the ground. But it was a trap. What the enemy had kicked was John's coat, which he had hung on a stick. John bravely confronted the enemy. They fought, and John finally and brutally killed the aggressor. A little later, another enemy arrived. Seeing his companion dragging John, which was another trick, as John had dressed the dead man in his own clothes and worn the dead man's, the second enemy rushed to help, momentarily confused. He felt something was wrong as he got closer, but before he could realize the deception, John attacked and killed him too. John pressed on, determined to eliminate the enemy leader. He saw the leader standing in the distance, showing no fear. John fired an arrow at him. The arrow struck the leader's leg, and he fell. Seeing this, John ran to him. As he prepared to fire a second arrow, the leader, realizing his imminent death, closed his eyes and awaited the end. But, unfortunately, the bow broke at that crucial moment. All of John's plans were ruined. The two men discarded their bows and faced each other with knives for a final duel. Before the fight could begin, they heard the terrifying sound of the wild dogs. Hearing the noise, John immediately ran away. The leader also tried to run, but his injured leg prevented him from escaping. He became a target for the wild dogs. John assumed he had been killed. Running further away, John found a house. He entered to secure some food supplies. It was at this moment that he encountered the enemy leader, who had escaped the wild dogs and made it there. A fierce, final battle ensued between the two. John pressed hard on the leader's wound, weakening him. Then, he picked up a gun lying nearby and shot him dead. John's revenge was complete. He had eliminated all his enemies and recovered his wife's medicines. He quickly rushed back home. After all his struggles, he reached his house to find the door open and his wife missing. John was overcome with despair. He believed his wife must have fallen prey to the wild dogs or wolves. He sat on the ground and began to weep. However, at that moment, his wife came up behind him. She was alive, having been saved by her prayers and her own will to survive. The two were reunited, and their joy was immense. Here, the story of the film ends.